The planet was silent, save for the distant hum of a starship hovering in the atmosphere. Earth's forces were scattered across a vast, uncharted terrain, dense jungles interspersed with rocky outcroppings, a perfect battleground for the Galactic Union's joint military exercise. The air was thick with humidity, but beneath it, the sharp scent of earth and metal was unmistakable. Lieutenant Riley Graves crouched low in the thick underbrush, her rifle lying perfectly still in her arms. She could feel the weight of the weapon against her, a reminder of the simplicity of Earth's armament compared to the highly advanced systems of other species. The thought was fleeting. Riley wasn't concerned about the power of her rifle. She was concerned with the power of her patience. Her team, a small group of highly trained operatives, lay hidden around her, carefully blending into their surroundings. They were to hold a forward position in this exercise, defending a remote outpost against various alien forces. Each squad was to face off in a mock assault and defense, the stakes set high by the Galactic Union. But this wasn't just any training exercise for Earth. This was Earth's moment to prove itself. Riley's eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon through the scope of her rifle, her finger lightly resting on the trigger. Her sharp senses were attuned to every subtle shift in the environment, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the chirping of distant wildlife, the faint snap of a twig underfoot. Her mind worked like a machine, calculating distances, wind speed, and the lay of the land. She didn't need to hear it. She felt the game unfolding around her. And she knew exactly who was coming. The Cardathians. She didn't need to see them to know they were near. Their presence was almost palpable, the air around them humming with the energy of their technological superiority. The Cardathians were a proud, ancient species, masters of advanced warfare and tactics. But they had a blind spot, arrogance. And Riley wasn't about to let them forget it. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, silhouettes darting between the trees. The Cardathian scouts had arrived. Positions, she whispered into her comms, her voice a low murmur, but sharp enough for her team to hear. The team fell into position. Every member of her squad, from the tech specialists to the combat medics, knew their role. They were here to defend, to hold the line, but also to show the galaxy that Earth wasn't the fragile, undeveloped species they assumed it to be. Riley had studied the Cardathian tactics from previous exercises, swift, direct, and methodical. They relied on superior firepower and advanced weaponry, but their lack of creativity often left them predictable. Riley didn't trust the word, predictable, in a battlefield, but she knew they'd give her the opening she needed. As the Cardathians advanced, their armor glinted under the alien sun. Riley's lips curled into a faint smile as she caught sight of their leader, Commander Zalveric, tall and imposing, his posture radiating confidence. He was watching the terrain with the commander's eye, too focused on his troops and too dismissive of the humans. "I assume Earth's rifles are just for show," Zal had mocked earlier when they first met. "Primitive tools. But I'm curious. Let's see how long your weapons last." Riley's team had kept their composure. The Cardathians were known for their haughty disdain toward other species, especially humans. But Riley wasn't concerned with their scorn. If anything, it gave her an edge. They underestimated Earth. They always did. "Don't let them see you," she ordered softly to her squad. Her heartbeat slowed as she tightened her grip on the rifle, her gaze unwavering as the first Cardathian scout came into view, his figure moving cautiously through the underbrush. He was too confident, too assured that no human rifle could touch him. Riley's crosshairs rested squarely on his chest. "Wait for it." The scout paused, glancing in her direction as if he sensed something was off, but it was too late. Riley's finger tightened on the trigger with a practiced grace. The shot rang out, sharp and decisive. The scout crumpled without a sound, his body hitting the ground with a dull thud. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Riley didn't move, didn't let herself even breathe too deeply. Her team held their positions, waiting for the Cardathians to react. The shot had been clean, efficient, and lethal, but now, she was a ghost in the jungle once more. A moment later, chaos erupted. The Cardathians scrambled, their voices echoing through the trees in their native tongue. Zal's voice was unmistakable in the chaos, commanding, sharp, filled with the bitter edge of disbelief. "They're here," he growled. "Find them!" Riley's squad tightened their perimeter. The enemy was now fully aware of the human presence, and their arrogance had been shattered by the loss of a scout so effortlessly taken out. Riley knew that Zal would have no choice but to adapt, but that wasn't something he did well. "Everyone focus!" Riley's voice broke through the static of her comms. "Don't get sloppy. We've got them on the back foot." A few minutes later, another scout appeared, this time more cautious. His movements were deliberate, scanning the surroundings. He was smarter, more aware, but that only meant he'd be harder to surprise. One shot, Riley thought. One shot is all it takes. She exhaled slowly, her breath steady and controlled. The rifle was an extension of her body now, every part of her in sync with its weight, its mechanics. Her target was in range, but just barely. The wind shifted, and her eyes fluttered for a brief second to adjust for the slight change. She could feel it. The right moment was almost upon her. "Don't move," Riley muttered to herself. With the precision of a surgeon, her finger gently squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew, splitting the air with a sharp hiss. This time, the shot didn't hit the scout directly. Instead, it clipped the edge of his helmet, sending him stumbling backward, disoriented. He never saw it coming. The momentary disarray was enough. The Cardathians, rattled but not beaten, retreated into the trees for cover. Riley stood, slowly lowering her rifle. "Two down," she said softly into her comms. "Good work, Lieutenant," came the voice of her second-in-command, Sergeant Anale, her tone laced with pride. "Hold steady. The real fight is coming," Riley replied. She wasn't ready to celebrate, not yet. Not until they proved the Cardathians were wrong about humanity. And Zal wasn't laughing anymore. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, as Riley Graves crouched behind a thick cluster of foliage, her rifle cradled in her arms like an old, trusted friend. The humidity of the alien jungle hung heavy in the air, making every breath feel like it had to fight its way into her lungs. Her team was spread out in a wide semicircle, each of them maintaining a stillness that came from years of training, years of understanding that the smallest movement could betray them. The Cardathians had retreated briefly after the first skirmish, regrouping and making tactical adjustments. Riley knew they wouldn't be fooled for long. One shot, no matter how accurate, wouldn't be enough to stop them. If anything, it would make them more determined, more focused on proving their superiority. It didn't take long for the Cardathians to reappear, this time in greater numbers. Riley could feel the shift in the air. They were closing in, tightening their noose. The earlier disarray had given way to a cold precision. They weren't coming in with overconfidence anymore. They were moving with purpose, clearing the terrain with efficiency that only centuries of warfare could instill. Riley's breath caught as her eyes tracked their movements. They were smarter now, calculating, not underestimating. The Cardathian forces, armed with advanced technology, were formidable. Their rifles were sleek, their armor nearly impenetrable. Yet there was a flaw in their approach. They relied too heavily on their tech, too much on their ability to force their way through battles, rather than thinking creatively. That was something Earth's forces had over them, a raw, adaptable ingenuity. "Riley, they're moving in on the western flank," came the voice of Sergeant Anale through her comms, a steady whisper. "You ready?" "Always," Riley replied, her eyes narrowing on a Cardathian scout, barely visible behind a thick tree trunk. Her finger itched for the trigger, but she held back. The scout was too close to a larger group. If she fired now, it would alert them all. Patience. She'd learned long ago that rushing the shot was a fool's game. The scout moved, oblivious to Riley's presence. She could almost hear his thoughts, too confident, too sure that they had the upper hand. They wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Zal Varric, the Cardathian commander, had begun barking orders through his comms, his voice low but commanding, filled with the kind of arrogance that Riley had come to expect from his kind. He had assumed that Earth's forces would buckle under pressure, that the primitive tools they wielded were no match for his elite warriors. She knew it would take more than that to prove him wrong. And that's exactly what she was planning. The Cardathians began to fan out, covering every possible angle, their movements sharp, precise. Riley watched as one of them, a hulking figure in dark combat armor, moved closer to her position. The creature was bulky, towering over the brush, scanning for anything out of the ordinary. This was no ordinary soldier. This was one of Zala's elite. Not yet, Riley whispered to herself, her finger gently resting against the trigger. Lieutenant, we need to fall back to the secondary position. Anel's voice came through again, quieter now, but still full of tension. They've got us surrounded. Riley's gaze darted to the left. Her squad was pinned down on the eastern side, but the trap wasn't fully sprung. Not yet. They won't expect us to hold this position, Riley replied, her voice cold. She wasn't going anywhere, not yet. Not while she still had a chance to outthink them. Understood. Anel responded, the decision made. We'll hold for as long as we can. Riley's pulse quickened. There was something about the Cardathians' approach that unnerved her, not the fact that they were overwhelming, but the way they lacked imagination. She could see their moves coming before they made them. It was almost too easy. The elite Cardathian moved another step closer to her, and Riley's breath stilled. She could see his movements through the lens of her rifle, his arm twitching as if preparing to reach for something. He was about to make a fatal mistake. Just one more step. The shot rang out, a sharp crack that split the still air. The Cardathian elite dropped without a sound, a clean shot to the neck. His body collapsed forward with the weight of his armor, hitting the ground with a muffled thud. The entire Cardathian group froze. Riley had expected this, a moment of hesitation, a crack in their confident armor. It was all she needed. Her team took action immediately. Anel's voice cut through the air as she led a counterattack, pushing forward with the rest of the squad. Move out! They're on the back foot! The Cardathians' response was swift, though less coordinated than they had been moments before. Their commander's voice screamed through the comms. Regroup! Reinforce the western flank! But it was too late. Earth's soldiers had already adapted, weaving through the underbrush and attacking in smaller, unpredictable groups. Riley held her position, watching as the Cardathians scrambled to regain control. The leader was struggling, his calm demeanor cracking under the pressure. Zal had thought this would be a simple exercise, a walk in the park. He had assumed Earth's forces were just an afterthought, a training exercise for the bigger players of the galaxy. But Earth had something the Cardathians didn't: resilience. The Cardathians depended on overwhelming force. They had no backup plan, no alternative tactics. Earth soldiers had adaptability, something that couldn't be replicated by technology. Riley took another shot, dropping another Cardathian scout attempting to flank her team. The sniper's role was to cause disruption, to force chaos into the Cardathian strategy, and she was doing exactly that. Riley, we need to fall back. Anel's voice came again, this time more insistent. They've pulled back a few units to the north, too many for us to hold here. Riley nodded, already calculating the safest route to the secondary position. They had made their point. They'd forced the Cardathians to rethink their approach. But it was only a temporary victory. The true test would come when Zal regrouped and launched a full-scale assault. As Riley moved to join her team, she spared a glance at the distant jungle, where the Cardathians were quickly recovering their composure. She could see Zal, standing tall among his scattered forces, barking orders with venom in his voice. His arrogance had been pierced, but his pride had only grown sharper. This would be far from over. Riley, Anel said again, voice tight with urgency. We're not out of this yet. No, Riley replied, her gaze steady, her resolve firm. But we will be soon. Just keep moving. The ground was uneven as they withdrew, but Riley's focus never wavered. The jungle, once a sprawling, chaotic battlefield, now felt strangely still. The Cardathians had learned something that day, something they wouldn't soon forget. But Riley knew the truth: They had only just begun to see what Earth was capable of. The next round would be theirs. The jungle was alive with the hum of tension. Every rustle in the trees, every snap of a branch underfoot felt amplified in Riley Graves' ears. Her squad had moved to their fallback position, an old ruin, half covered in creeping vines and the scars of ages past. The stone walls, once proud and strong, now provided cover for the few human forces left standing. But Riley knew their time was limited. The Cardathians were regrouping, ready to come at them with full force. Her heart beat steady in her chest. She wasn't worried, but she wasn't naive either. The next few minutes would determine everything. Earth had already proven its ingenuity, but that wouldn't be enough. The Cardathians would come for them with everything they had. Riley's job was simple: hold them off long enough for the others to make it out. And there was one more thing she had to do: take down Zal. From her vantage point, Riley could see him, a towering figure in the distance, barking orders at his elite forces, his face still flushed with the sting of their earlier humiliation. His arrogance had turned into anger, but beneath it, Riley could sense the shift in him. He was rattled. And when people like Zal were rattled, they became predictable. "Status report," Riley said into her comm, her voice low but commanding. "All units holding position, but we're running low on supplies," came Anel's voice, calm but with an edge of urgency. "They're closing in, Lieutenant. We're outnumbered." Riley didn't flinch. Her rifle was resting in her arms, the weight familiar, comforting. "We hold. No one moves until we're sure they've committed," she ordered. She didn't add that she knew this was a losing battle. The Cardathians were on the edge of their final assault, and Zal wasn't the kind of commander to retreat after suffering a few losses. If anything, it would make him more determined to break them. As the minutes ticked by, Riley's squad remained hidden within the ruins, tucked behind rocks and debris, waiting for the Cardathian strike. Riley's eyes never left Zal. Her job wasn't just to survive, she was here to send a message. Earth would not bow. It would fight back. There was no time for second-guessing. Riley's mission had been clear from the start: show them what humans were capable of. And now, as the Cardathians prepared for their final assault, it was time for the last act. She could hear Zal's orders being shouted through the jungle, his voice growing more demanding with each passing second. He was gearing up for the kill, confident that this time, Earth would break. "They're coming," Anel said, her voice tight with barely contained fear. "Lieutenant, we need to move." "No," Riley cut in, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "We wait. If they're coming, we make them pay for every step." Her voice was cold, each word chosen with surgical precision. Riley wasn't concerned about her squad's safety, not now. This was about making the Cardathians understand that humanity wasn't just a force to be reckoned with. They were the future. Minutes passed, each one a slow, agonizing drag. The Cardathians were drawing closer. Riley adjusted the scope on her rifle, making sure the crosshairs were centered on Zal. Her breath was steady, her mind sharp, every movement deliberate. It would take just one shot to change everything. The first Cardathian scout emerged from the trees, cautiously moving through the underbrush. He was scanning, looking for any sign of movement. Riley's finger rested on the trigger, but she waited. The shot would have to be perfect. She had one chance. And then she saw him. Zal stepped into the clearing, his towering figure cutting a commanding silhouette against the dense backdrop of the jungle. He stood tall, his arms crossed, his gaze piercing the thick undergrowth, as if daring anything to approach him. He was too sure of himself, too sure that his victory was inevitable. Riley's pulse quickened. The Cardathian leader was within her sights. This was the moment she had prepared for. She knew this wasn't just a tactical kill, it was a message. The universe needed to see this. She took a slow, deliberate breath, steadying herself. Now. Her finger tightened, the rifle's mechanism responding with a soft click as the trigger was pulled. The sound of the shot echoed through the jungle, a sharp crack that shattered the silence. Zal didn't have time to react. The bullet struck him squarely in the shoulder, the force of it sending him stumbling backward. His bodyguard scrambled to pull him to safety, but Riley's mark was true. She'd crippled him, his right arm useless, blood pouring from the wound. Zal roared in pain, his command faltering for the first time in the battle. The sight of his injured form sent shockwaves through his troops, his confidence cracking like fragile glass. The elite Cardathians hesitated, confusion spreading through their ranks. "Fall back!" Zal shouted, his voice hoarse, panic creeping into his tone for the first time. His usually composed demeanor was shattered, replaced by a desperate need to regain control. But it was too late. Riley had already done her part. The Cardathian assault faltered. Their movements slowed, their lines breaking as uncertainty filled their ranks. They had been led to believe they were invincible, their advanced technology the ultimate weapon. But now, faced with the reality that they had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and most importantly, outgunned, they began to retreat. Anel's voice came over the calm, filled with disbelief. Did you take out Zal?" Riley didn't answer immediately. She watched the Cardathians retreat, Zal's elite forces carrying him away, their retreat a broken procession of defeat. "We've won," she said finally, her voice cold but steady. Her squad emerged from their cover, moving cautiously but with growing confidence. They had held the line. They had sent a clear message. Riley remained behind, watching the remnants of the Cardathian forces regrouping in the distance. The jungle, once filled with the sound of battle, was now eerily quiet. She felt a wave of quiet satisfaction, tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. This battle had been small, but it had been decisive. The Cardathians would learn from this, just as every other species would. Riley turned to join her team, but her thoughts lingered on Zal. His arrogance had blinded him. And now, the galaxy had seen the true strength of humanity. As the last of the Cardathians disappeared into the jungle, Riley allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. It wasn't over yet, but they had made their mark. And Earth wasn't done proving itself.